When politics start addressing its issues that America has, it usually points to the increase of violence levels and increase of crime rates that's happening all over the US. And the biggest one they would always talk about is mass shooting, where people, or rather person, would shoot up a concert or school, but majority of them are mostly school now these days in our current time. And when they talk about such incident, they would always start linking it to video games. And I'm asking the question is, why does politics demonize video games? As it's been researched that video games are not directly linked to such incident, but rather it also have opposite effect, as in it decrease the violence level and also crime rate in certain state when they get their hands on, or rather release of a system of video games to their state. Let's talk about what video game is and the meaning of it for us and how we interpret it as today. As we interpret it as something fun, something that we can pass our time, something to entertain us when we're bored, something that we can always compete with each other. Video games are the expression of art. They take inspiration from religion or myths from other country, and also some of them would be remixed into their own story. In some cases, some video games are becoming more philosophical as of now today, including Bloodborne, where it's a mix of human is the center of the world and the main protagonist of everything else, with another opposing ideology of H.P. Lovecraft work, where humans are not the center of the world, rather a tiny insect in a much more larger picture. And you would also have Nier Automata, where humans are extinct, yet you have robots and androids walking around and acting like humans, and despite that, they're not humans. Now, as video games were getting popular and being developed back in the day, there were talks how much violence it had, and it's true, there were no restriction of whoever at whatever age could get their hands on. You could have a 7-year-old Timmy get their hands on the new Call of Duty Black Ops that's rated M for mature with gun violence and swearing. But now that we have a rating system, him going to the store and trying to buy one would be impossible, and only a parent can authorize such purchase either way. Video games has developed a system where it's age restricting of who plays what game at a certain age, and despite that, little kids still get their hands on it from 7 to 8 years old, or even 10 years old can still get their hands on such game as Call of Duty that's rated M for mature, which should be 17 or older to play it. Yet this isn't really the video game industry's fault, but rather it's the negligence from their parents, as they're the only one who can authorize such purchase at a certain age of M for mature. And the system itself is working perfectly. There has been, ever since it was rather been in place, it stops a lot of children from getting such games of Call of Duty, or rather Doom, the famous game that has been talked in the media in the past about its link, quote unquote, to incident of the Columbine shooting. The system itself is working perfectly to restrict the amount of little kids getting their hands on such a really violent game in general, but this is really a heavy impression, especially when people start thinking, what if the people who was old enough was to buy it and was also influenced, or rather heavily influenced by the game? One example is the Columbine shooting, where it is found by the police investigation that the two teenagers, students of Columbine, shot the school up and killed few students and also few faculty teachers in the school, also played a game called Doom, which is also the first-person shooter game where people say it's evil for having demons in it and satanic imagery and also blood and violence. But however, that is far from the truth for that incident. As the police investigate such incident, they would discover a notebook that acts as their diary that showcased the mental health issue that these teenagers was dealing with. They feel alienated, they feel isolated from their fellow students, and they don't feel really connecting to their parents, and there's a lot of heavy mental issue that they had, and even their parent didn't even know about. Yet, when the news media cover such evidence that the police confiscated, they look at the video game that seems really, really violent due to the picture, as you can see. The news media only saw the video game that the police confiscated as evidence, but they took that kind of confiscation as the real speculation of why it's happening. This is all due to the moral panic that's happening. As moral panic is when a person saw some incident that they really want an answer to it, and they would take whatever answer they could get just to justify why an incident would happen. Moral panic is not something new that politics have seen, as they often use it to talk about immigration, and rather they use it as a way to back up their scapegoat that they use at the time, especially immigration. As I mentioned, when Trump talks about how America is being threatened by immigration and how because they're bringing all these drugs and guns into America, despite the fact that it's not really true, as most shooters, or rather all violence is occurred, is from a white person rather than an immigrant, you can say. This is how moral panics also played into politics, as now video games is another easy way for politics to use as a scapegoat to talk about their issue, or rather addressing the issue. But this is further from the truth, because psychologically, the people who commit these kind of shootings, mass shootings and crimes, have a lot of mental issues or psychological issue that isn't really addressed in the news media.